Hi, I'm Justin Keay, Field Specialist in Horticulture for MU Extension. I'm joined by James Quinn, retired MU Extension Horticulture Specialist. And I wanted to bring James on today to talk a little bit about the research that he did into novelty melons in Missouri. And James, I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit more about this project, what your goals were, why you started doing this.
Yeah, be happy to. So I got inspired to get into this project quite a number of years ago when I saw an article written by Dave Trinkline about all the different kinds of novelty melons. I had no idea that there were like 10 different categories of novelty melons. And on the left side of this screen, you see some of those different names. Everybody kind of knows cantaloupes and muskmelons, but they might not know about ananas or canary melons or peel de sapos. And probably the one that a lot of people kind of know of, I call it kind of the holy grail of the specialty melons, is French Charente. So people get very excited about these different melons. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to do a project on this, was to try to find 3 or 4 really good novelty melons that I felt growers could grow commercially and sell and know that they wouldn't have quality problems with them. And that consumers would find them distinct and different.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the varieties that you did decide to try out.
Yeah, so for at least 4 years, I grew a number of different melon varieties in my home garden. And then about 2 years out of that, I did taste testings at like Master Gardener events and such like that with my own ones that I grew personally. And through that, I basically identified 4 that I felt were very distinctively different. And they also held up well, didn't crack. And so those are, from the top, Brilliant, which is a canary type melon. Canary, like the name, bright yellow. Honey Orange is a crispy flesh honeydew. Lambkin is called a peel de sapo. Some people call it like alligator skin melon. And then Lily is a small and early Crenshaw type melon, which was kind of popular in the South several decades ago. And then as a control is a melon that got really popular maybe the last 5 or 10 years, called Sugar Cube. Kind of became the standard for an extremely good small and sweet cantaloupe. So that was kind of that. So these comprise the melon variety trial, with that Sugar Cube being the standard, so to speak.
Okay. And these are all, I mean, the flesh looks like it varies from yellow to orange cream to green. These are some eye-popping varieties here.
Yeah, the canary has the very kind of white flesh and is real kind of nice, crisp flavor. Item C there is the peel de sapo, a little bit more greenish, but again, kind of a white flesh, has a little bit of a piney flavor. Your number D there is the Crenshaw type. It has kind of that characteristic shape of a Crenshaw melon. And then B is that Honey Orange, which is a crisp flesh honeydew. And so people that have never had a crisp flesh honeydew, it's kind of an odd thing, because you think a honeydew is going to be soft and all of a sudden it's crispy. So it's a little bit unique. And then farthest on the right there is E, and that's the Sugar Cube.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the data that you gathered in terms of yield. And then it looks like there's also some information here related to Brix content or sugar content. Can you tell us a little bit more about what we're seeing on the screen here?
Yeah, so it was a classic variety trial where we did measure the yield, and then we also looked at quality factors as well. In the yield trial, you also have a quality in that some varieties might not hold up as well and they're going to get culled, so that's kind of a quality issue. But in terms of the yield, they all did outstanding. The Sugar Cube is a smaller melon, so it has a lot more little melons per plant than the other ones. But if you look at it by weight, they all were quite good. And then the only quality or cull issue we saw with Lily was it had a tendency to crack more, which could be compensated by maybe restricting irrigation. But the rest of them were pretty normal on that. In terms of the soluble solids, that's an important characteristic to look at. And so that's used off. Sometimes people refer to that as bricks. And so in that table 2 on the left side is that column about the bricks. And they were all pretty good on that, and fell within the range that you would expect, because other variety trials have shown that the honeydews tend to have the highest soluble solids of any of the specialty melons. And so the honey orange was the highest of those at over 15. But the other ones were all pretty, typical, being in that 11 to 13 range. And lily is a different kind of a melon, or the Crenshaw is a lily, is a little bit different type of a melon. So it's a little bit lower.
And I understand you, in addition to the yield data, you also did some consumer taste tests and then also looked into storage properties of these melons. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, consumer taste testing has got to be one of the most fun things you can ever do, because it's so interesting to get people in a room and have them taste these different kind of delicious melons and get their reactions. And that was almost so much fun. It should be illegal. But anyway, we had great fun with that, and it was good to get the consumer's response to these melons. And I go into some detail in that when we have the information posted online. But both Brilliant and Lambkin really shined in terms of the consumer taste test, because people like crispy fruits now more than mushy fruits. And they were crisp, they were clean, they were good. Even if they didn't have maximum, ripeness, people still liked them. Honey orange, people loved them if it was fully ripe, but it was very challenging to get honey orange at a full ripeness and tell that when it was. And if it wasn't fully ripe, people didn't always like the flavor. And then the lily, some people like it, like it's kind of had this old time melon, old time appeal. And it was interesting how often people a little older really liked lily. And then people from different ethnicities seem to really like lily. People who like a papaya just really like the flavor and consistency of lily. So each one has this kind of little niche in appeal to different people. But we talk about in which ones would recommend people would really embrace and try out if they want to try some new novelty melons. It would be the Brilliant and the Lambkin.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like, there's so much interest. There's so many different great vegetable varieties out there. People might not know how to sort through the information, and maybe they might want to grow an heirloom variety, but it doesn't store well. Or like you were saying, the French Charentaise cracks. It seems like you've found a couple of varieties here that both produce very well and have a great consumer appeal.
Yes, that is true. And another thing is each one is distinctly different. We don't need just another cantaloupe out there. Sugar cube is just excellent. We don't need another sugar cube or 2 more sugar cubes. What we need is things that are distinctly different to capture people's attention. And so that was one of the ideas behind it. Each one of these melons also looks completely different. And, to get consumers' interest, they need to walk down and they need to see different types, colors, shapes, to capture their interest, to get them then to want to do the taste testing or to try them, buy one and take it home.
So what are like your key takeaways? What should growers kind of take away from this information? If they're looking to get started with some of these specialty melons, you said the 2 varieties you'd suggest to kind of start with would be.
Yeah, if they're in a very competitive market where they have to really make a living with it, like say they're selling at a produce auction, Brilliant and Lambkin are really good. If they're selling at a farmer's market and they have a good rapport with their different clientele, I'd say they could go ahead and try all 4 of them. That's also kind of assuming they might already be familiar with sugar cube, because sugar cube is, you see it around at farmers markets. A lot of people really know it as a good melon. So I'm kind of assuming they might already know about sugar cube. But I think all 4 of these are really good, excellent choices, and better than a person to do a lot of trial and error on their own. with these.
Yeah.
I do want to say that at the very beginning of the project, I tried some French Charente that, were kind of claimed as, oh, these ones, don't split as bad. And I had terrible luck with French Charente. They would always split. Fantastic flavor, split every time. And with that, I just had to kick some of those out. Lots of varieties out that I really liked and thought were unique and interesting and different. But, these ones really came through to me as ones that would be worthwhile and perform for growers.
Awesome. Well, James, I want to thank you for joining us today. This sounds like a really cool project. We have an article about this project. I'll include a link to that article in the description of the YouTube video so everybody can check that out. But I appreciate your time. Thanks for doing the project and helping get this knowledge out there.
Yep, you're welcome. Good to see you today, Justin.